In the sun-soaked hills of Canaan, where the fields stretched wide and golden, there lived a young man named Joseph, a dreamer with a heart full of wonder. At just 17, Joseph was the apple of his father Jacob's eye, born in his old age to his beloved Rachel. Jacob made him a robe of many colors, a garment so fine and vivid it turned heads. But that robe became more than a gift. It became a symbol of favor. And in a family of 11 brothers, favor could be dangerous. Joseph's older brothers toiled in the fields, hardened by labor and sun. They saw the robe and saw their father's preference, and in their hearts grew a bitter envy. What made it worse were Joseph's dreams, strange, vivid dreams he shared without hesitation. "We were binding sheaves in the field," he once told them. "Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to mine." Another time he said, "I saw the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing before me." His brothers sneered. Even Jacob, though puzzled, rebuked him gently, asking, "Will your mother and I and your brothers truly bow down to you?" But Jacob kept the matter in mind, sensing that something more might be at play. The dream stirred resentment like dust in the wind, and his brothers' hatred festered. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were pasturing the flocks near Shechem. He wandered until he found them in Dothan. As he approached, his coat bright against the dry land, they saw him from afar. "Here comes that dreamer," one said. Another snarled, "Let's kill him and throw him into a pit, then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." Reuben the eldest intervened. "Don't shed blood, throw him into this pit, but do not harm him." He secretly planned to return and rescue Joseph. So when Joseph reached them, they grabbed him, tore off his beloved robe, and threw him into a dry, empty pit. Alone and frightened, Joseph's cries echoed off the stone. While they sat eating, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders appeared on the horizon, camels, laden with spices bound for Egypt. Judah saw opportunity. "What profit is there in killing our brother? Let's sell him to these traders instead." And so they lifted Joseph from the pit, their brother now bound in ropes, and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Joseph was taken away, vanishing into the dust as his brothers watched. To cover their guilt, they slaughtered a goat and dipped Joseph's robe in its blood. They brought it to Jacob and said, "We found this. Is it your son's robe?" Jacob clutched the torn, bloodied garment and wept bitterly. "A wild beast has devoured him," he cried. "I will go down to the grave mourning my son. No comfort could reach him." Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. But though stripped of his home, his freedom, and his coat, Joseph had not lost the one thing that mattered most. God was with him. In Potiphar's house, Joseph prospered. Everything he did succeeded, and Potiphar saw that Joseph was no ordinary slave. He made Joseph overseer of his household, entrusting him with all he owned. Under Joseph's care, Potiphar's house flourished. But where favor goes, temptation follows. Potiphar's wife watched Joseph with hungry eyes. "Come lie with me," she whispered, but Joseph refused. "My master has withheld nothing from me except you," he said, "because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Day after day she pursued him, but Joseph stood firm. One day when no one else was in the house, she caught him by his cloak. He fled, leaving it in her hands. Scorned and furious, she cried out and turned the cloak into evidence. "This Hebrew slave tried to violate me," she claimed. When Potiphar heard the accusation, his fury burned and Joseph was thrown into prison. Yet even there, in the darkness of a dungeon, the Lord was with Joseph. The prison keeper saw the same light in him that others had seen, and Joseph was put in charge of all the prisoners. Whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. Chains could not bind the favor of God. In time, 2 of Pharaoh's officials were thrown into that same prison, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. One night, both men had dreams that troubled them deeply. When Joseph saw them downcast, he asked, "Why do you look so sad today?" They replied, "We each had a dream, but there is no one to interpret them." Joseph said, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer spoke first. "In my dream there was a vine with 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and clusters ripened into grapes. I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup and gave it to him." Joseph smiled. "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. When that happens, remember me. Mention me to Pharaoh, for I was stolen from my land and have done nothing to deserve this prison." Encouraged, the baker shared his dream. "I had 3 baskets of bread on my head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds were eating from it." Joseph's tone turned somber. "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on a tree. Birds will eat your flesh." 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, both interpretations came true. The cupbearer was restored, the baker was executed, but the cupbearer, lifted high again in Pharaoh's court, forgot Joseph, and Joseph remained in prison, alone, yet not abandoned, forgotten by man, but remembered by God. What Joseph could not see was that every step, every betrayal, every false accusation, every delay, was not a detour, but the very road to his destiny. The dreams planted in a boy's heart had not died. They were buried like seeds, and in time, they would rise. One day the door would open, the dreams would breathe again, and the boy with the robe, once thrown into a pit, would stand in a palace, holding not just his own life in his hands, but the fate of nations. For though the world tried to strip him of his robe, his freedom, and his name, they could not strip him of his purpose. And the God who was with him in the pit would soon lift him to the throne. Here are the moral reflections. Joseph's story is not just ancient history, it is a mirror. Your dreams may seem delayed, buried, or betrayed, but delay is not denial. You may be falsely accused, wrongly imprisoned, or forgotten, but you are never forsaken. If God is with you in the pit, in the palace, and in prison, then your story is still unfolding. In the silence, in the suffering, God weaves destiny. So keep dreaming, even in the dungeon. Because your coat may have been torn, but your calling remains.